Good morning, everybody. I'm not so sure about being a philosopher. It just reminds me of when I was in college. First of all, as Susie said there, I originally was a primary school teacher, and we studied philosophy in college in first year. And one of the first things about philosophy that I had heard of when we were studying in the room, we were having a lecture, and the lecturer says, how do you know when you're in a room that there's anything outside the door if the door is shut? And I just totally could not grab this idea at all. But if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. What is reality and what isn't reality? The reality about me is that I am a girl from County Clare, brought up on a farm with my 5 siblings. It was a farm that my grandfather had bought when he moved to West Clare. Both my parents were primary school teachers, and I suppose like a lot of people, we naturally fall into careers or paths that follow our parents' destination. We were brought up the farm. Mum and Dad always had just a few donkeys and ponies and cows to keep us entertained and keep Dad entertained and keep Mum very vexed for our childhood. And they used to lease out the farm to what we considered real farmers, our neighbours next door, who reared cattle for beef or for milking for dairy mainly. But we were also brought up knowing what real food was. We used to milk the few cows we had, and we used to fight over the cream at the top of the milk to put on our cornflakes because we felt that was the real special treat. Also, we made butter in very small quantities, which we liked very much, which nowadays, if my children tasted, they would not like it at all, because we're so used to homogenised milk, homogenised butter, homogenised everything, including homogenised people at this stage. We used to make ice cream out of snow when we had it, because we did have snow 30 years ago, like we have now, and more recently as well. But so we were brought up with, simple food. But I was also brought up on the likes of Calvita cheese, Laughing Cow cheese, and very processed cheese. And this is what I thought cheese was. Little did I know that about 20 years later I would be promoting and advocating mould and stinking and very aromatic cheeses, as opposed to very bland but functional cheeses. I did go on to become a teacher of 2-legged kids. After a couple of years of teaching them, I decided my expertise was probably more in 4-legged than 2-legged kids, more thanks to the parents than to the actual children themselves. And it was a very challenging couple of years, but what I always knew that I was a country girl at heart. I always knew that the land and the farm that we had was very finite. Other things come and go, but we all have very limited land in our country and in Europe and in the world in general. And if we're not careful to look after the land that we now have, it will, and it is shrinking due to all sorts of climate change, whether they be influenced by man or not. So I always felt it was a pity that one of us 6 children weren't doing anything with the farm, and that was being leased out. The thing is, where I live in West Clare, and you see just the sliding roll of photographs there, it's quite, it's not anywhere like the green pastures that we have in the centre of Ireland, the Golden Vale, that you have up here in Northern Ireland. We're just 7 miles in from the Atlantic coast. We're at the foot of the highest mountain, or some people would call hill, in West Clare. So when the clouds come in off the Atlantic, they hit Mount Callan, and we get lovely, lots of soft, gentle rain. Not always so soft and not always so gentle. So the farm we have is very peaty and earthy. So it's not great for your conventional type farming. So when I was deciding what I would do besides teaching, I knew I wanted to do something with the land at home, but I was trying to think of something alternative to do. I took a year out where I went back to college, where I went back to Galway, where I was actually teaching, because being only 24 years of age, I still loved the vibe of Galway city, even though I was a country girl, and wanted an excuse to stay in Galway for another year. So I found a postgraduate business marketing course, and that I did for a year. It was for people who had studied anything but business, people like me who didn't really have any business acumen at all. I had come from a family of teachers, and grandparents were farmers and teachers. Then I worked for a year with an organisation, Shannon Development, who were promoting local and regional food products. It was the first time where I became aware about the importance of local and provenance and food from the region. I worked with a whole range of producers, from shellfish farmers to smoked salmon producers to basic and simple organic vegetable growers to a number of cheesemakers. During my childhood, a couple from the east coast of Ireland, from Wicklow, who had been horse breeders, had moved to the village of Ina, where I'm from, in the late 1970s, when the last big recession, I suppose, was in Ireland. And they had lost their land, their estate, and all their horses that they had for breeding when the economy fell. They moved down to the village of Ina and considered actually breeding horses on the farm in Ina, which was when they approached the bank manager about starting to breed horses where they now lived. The manager just looked at them blankly and asked them to go home and consider something else. So Meg and Derry Gordon, who were my neighbours when I was a child, they actually started first making St. Tola cheese, which is the brand name of the range of goat cheeses that I now make. They started making it in the early 1980s. At the time, there was a revival of farmhouse cheese making in Ireland. Up to then, we had the industrial cheeses of the big cheddars I was talking about, the Calvitas, Laughing Cows. But a number of individual people who had farms in Ireland who were looking for alternatives to do than just supply their milk into the big cooperatives at the time. So there was a kind of a movement in the early 80s of farmhouse cheese making. So there was kind of a resurrection into the tradition of making farmhouse cheese again. And Meg and Derek in the early 80s were one of the pioneers of this. Meg had finished her final year of schooling in France, where she had lived with on a farm where people made goat's cheese. So actually, after she got the blank and a definite no from the local bank manager with regards to her going back to breeding horses in West Clare, she considered making a goat's cheese. She went to France for a year, where she learned the technique of making the soft goat's cheese that we now make on our farm. And as you're aware, a lot of cheeses in France are called after local saints, Saint-Agur, Saint-Moray, and it was from that idea that Meg got the idea of calling the range of cheeses that we now make called Saint Tola cheese. Tola is the name of a saint who lived in County Clare in the 7th century and who is buried just over the road from from the village of Ina, the farm where we live. And that was incorporated in the logo. The name Tola, it's a boy's name. Most people, even outside of County Clare, have never heard of it. But I'm continually asked when I go to international fairs on that, is our cheese a French cheese? And I say, no, it's actually an Irish goat's cheese. So fortunately for me, Meg and Derek, who we had always known because my younger sisters were born with a very bad asthma, and we used to buy goat's milk from them. And in the early 70s, because as some of you may or may not know, goat's cheese and goat's milk products are very good for people with asthma, or with breathing difficulties, or with skin difficulties like eczema. And that now at the time, it was practically impossible to buy goat's milk in Ireland anywhere. Now it's quite prolific, will be in the main supermarkets throughout all of Northern Ireland. So we had always gone to Meg and Derek to buy the goat's milk from them. At the cheese, when it came to the cheese, we weren't gone on the cheese at all compared to what we were eating. But we would taste it because we were brought up to taste things. I remember one of our first trips to France when I was in secondary school. Mum and Dad brought us on a camping holiday. And our aunt and uncle came with us, and our uncle had worked for the Department of Foreign Affairs, and he travelled a lot. So each evening at the campsite, when we'd be cooking our beans, sausages, whatever, and our baguettes, Uncle Micheál would always have a range of different cheeses. And I remember one cheese in particular, it was a very blue cheese, and we were horrified looking at him eating this, because we never saw anything like this before. And we said to him, but you're eating mouldy cheese. And he said, yes, but it's good mould. And we just thought this was bizarre. Totally bizarre. We wouldn't go near it with a 40-foot pole. No way we were trying it. But I suppose as years develop and as we all travel, as Michelle was saying, you know, our palates have developed. Fortunately, travel has become more available abroad, so we've travelled abroad more. People are tasting new foods when they go abroad. Obviously, we have on this island a wonderful array of chefs, you know, who are bringing new cuisine, new products, new way of serving food to us. So our palates have developed, and now as I said, 20 years later, I am now a proud promoter of, strong flavoured, aromatic, the mouldier the better, the bluer the cheese, in my books. It takes time to educate people, but I have found over the 15 years that I've now been making St. Tola that people are now looking for a stronger. When I worked with Meg, first of all, in '98, when I decided to go work with Meg and Derek, because they were retiring and had no family themselves, and to them, their herd of goats, their 70 goats, were their family, and St. Tola was their family. So they were delighted when I saw the opportunity to work with them and take over the traditions of cheese making and farming goats in West Clare. And because I saw an opportunity from working with them, that it was an opportunity for me to continue to make the cheese and continue with this tradition in the village on our own farm. So in '99 we moved the goats, lock, stock and barrel up to the farm, and we continued to make the cheese, but developed the product range as we went along, because no business can stay still, I'm sure, as you know. You can't just stand on your laurels. You're only as good as the last write-up you got, the last award you got, because awards come and go and chefs come and go, and you still have to develop. And as you are all aware, because you're involved in this industry and tourism industry, there is more and more competition out there. And it's not just about your local competitors, all the world is a stage now, and the world is getting smaller, and from a tourism point of view, people are travelling all over the world, and definitely food tourism is on the up and on the increase, and there are people who particularly travel for food, as come to a country for food tourism, as a food tourism destination. And these people are the people who've got higher incomes and who are interested in real experiences. Where I came on the whole tourism part of my business, because I said, as I say, I'm first and foremost a cheesemaker who sells into the hotel and restaurant industry, the food service industry, also into a number of the multiples. And we developed our business, and we're going from a herd of 70 goats to now over 350 goats, 250 milking goats and counting, because the goats, the nannies, are kidding every day at the moment. Where tourism fit in my business, my main customers were always chefs. From the very start, from when Meg and Jerry first started, we wouldn't be where we are today in St. Tola if it hadn't been for the chefs, starting with the local chefs and leading chefs at the time in the 1980s, who put the first Irish goat's cheese on their menus and took the risk and put faith into the products that Meg and Derek were making, and other small producers throughout the country, when there was this kind of food revolution starting in the early 80s. And I always keep in mind of who my customer is and who the chefs are, because we're only as good as how our cheese is presented. Where we may be good at producing our cheese, it depends a lot on what the chef or whoever is selling the cheese then does with the product, how it's presented to the end consumer. In the 2007-2008, our business was going very well, and we were developing and we were growing. And like a lot of people, we went into bricks and mortar, but the bricks and mortar I was developing in, not in housing. Well, yes, in housing, but in housing for my goats and expanding my cheese house, because we had more and more demand for our product. Unfortunately, then the downturn in the economy started, as luck would have it, like with everybody else. I started to lose customers right, left and centre, because St. Tola is very much a niche product, was very much sold in the top end hotels and restaurants, was becoming more available, but a lot of these hotels and restaurants came under financial difficulty, began to close, go into receivership, etc. A lot of our existing customers were having to cut back on their budgets, were trying to survive, were having to cut back. St. Tola, as I say, is a niche product. It demands a niche price because it is a handcrafted. We have very little equipment. The equipment we have are the milking machines and a simple mixer. It's very much a handcrafted product that demands a high price. Our customers had to cut back, and we weren't bread and butter, milk, beef. They had to cut back on products, and St. Tola was one of those products. So I had to look. We were still producing, obviously. I made an investment. We were still producing cheese. I had to look at other ways of getting my income to keep my staff employed, to keep the business going, and to get get the price I needed to get for my product. Fortunately, where we're situated in Ina, we're on the main tourist route coming in from Limerick, Shannon, coming in from East Clare, heading towards the west coast, towards the Atlantic, towards the Cliffs of Moher. We're just south of the Brine region, and that is a UNESCO designated geopark. And so we were always on a tourist route. We're just a quarter of a mile off the main road. So there were always tourists going up and down the main road. One of the funny things was when I first started, I had put signs up on the main road, but the signs were for delivery trucks who were delivering, or our wholesale customers who were picking up for trucks. But when people saw the signs on the road, saying Tola Goat Farm, people thought it was like an open farm. I'm sure you have some open farms here, where farms are just set up for them to visit. So we were ad hoc getting visitors on the farm while we were in the middle of milking, or up to our oxters and cheese making. So these people were coming in, and which was great to see, because when you never know who comes through the gate of your farm, of your cheese house, and you always have to take into consideration whoever comes through your front door or your back door, they are your potential customer, or could be your existing customer. But these people were coming in at ad hoc, and we weren't prepared for them really, because we were busy. We were a working farm, producing cheese, busy. There was nobody sitting idle. I think it's gas that tourists kind of turn up at all times of the day and night, literally at all times of the night, 7 days a week, at any time of the evening. And some of them haven't quite thought through what a farm or what a producer is about. Because I think they seem to think we're sitting there drinking cups of tea, eating whatever we produce, massaging our animals, waiting for people to come in so we could entertain them. So as these visitors were coming ad hoc, I did notice the team was only a small team, around me 4 or 5 on the team. As sure as hens lay eggs, as soon as we would sit down for our morning break, a car would drive in the yard. And then I noticed there was this kind of collective groan, And I said, lads, we got to do something about this. We got to turn this around and do something positive and use this to our advantage. And at the same time, this was in 2012, when the numbers were becoming increasingly higher coming onto the farm. And at that time, Fall to Ireland, the Irish Tourist Board, brought a number, 14 of us, people who were involved in tourism. There were hoteliers, chefs, food producers, people involved in farmers markets. They brought us on a benchmarking trip over to Canada, to an area called Prince Edward County, between Toronto and Montreal. And that was a 10-day trip where we got the opportunity to see how a region that had been totally devastated, that had lost its main industry, was producing canned tomatoes. They were the third producer of canned tomatoes in America and Canada. That all fell apart, but they built up a tourism industry slowly but surely, first of all by a number of 2 wineries that were set up, who then worked with 1 or 2 local restaurants and a few producers, and built up a whole food tourism industry, and that's now what Prince Edward County is known for. This is the first time that I got an insight into really what food tourism was about on that 10-day trip. I was travelling with some young chefs, the likes of Donald Doherty, who has opened Harry's Chef with Derek, with JP McManus, who's opened 3 restaurants in Galway, who has a Michelin star restaurant, who actually just got his Michelin star a week before we were going on the plane, who was like a lunatic on the plane because he wasn't expecting the Michelin star, and he was trying to ring the restaurants and nobody was answering the phone, which is not a good idea if you're winning a Michelin star, because everybody wants to go to your Michelin star restaurant once you get the star. So it was interesting, not only with the group of people I was travelling with, but the people that we met over in Canada. And I think, as Michelle said there, what we realised, and I suppose what was reinforced on that trip, and we continually have to remind ourselves, what we have here in Ireland is so unique, so beautiful, so special. But because we have been brought up here, and because we see it every day, we take it for granted. And it's only when we travel abroad and we see other, places, and we taste other foods and meet other people, that we realise what we have at home and what is so precious and what is so unique and what we should be so proud and what we should focus on and promote. And it's that that only comes to mind, I think, because I suppose we're so busy in the day-to-day things that we're doing and that we're brought up with it, that we don't continue to realise and remind ourselves, which is so important, about how unique and how special this island of Ireland is. As Susie had said there, that I am a firm believer in sustainable farming, and I'm part of this network that's been set up by the Brine Geopark and Brine Ecotourism Network, where a group of people living in the Brine region are very much, our main focus is on protecting the environment in which we're living, and by protecting the environment we're living, then we will protect the people that live on it and the people who come to visit it, because sustainable tourism is very, very important. It's not just about bringing, busloads of people in, getting as much money you can for them and sending them off, but and letting them leave whatever they leave behind. But we have to be very focused on protecting what we have, because it is unique on this island, and because we are an island protected by the sea, that we need to be very careful that, that we protect what we have, but that we appreciate it and sell it as it is. As Ms. Michelle was saying, grass-fed cows, which of course we all thought cows were grass-fed, but else would be fed on, but they're not. In Ireland they are grass-fed. We can't say the same about the chickens and pigs, but if things are improving, and farmers who are, doing, who are having free-range chickens and pigs are getting a premium price. So when I came home from my trip, I'm jumping from one thing to the other and probably losing you. When I came home from my trip, I said, okay guys, we're going to actually, have a focused section, on the farm in our business to do with food tourism. I didn't have money to invest, and I wasn't going to take the risk of putting a big investment. I didn't build a purpose-built, brand fancy visitor centre, and by that means, I used what I had. Fortunately, we have a very big goat shed, which you can probably see in the rolling pictures there, with a big long passage in the middle of it. So this is when the people first come into the tours. This is where they first come. They come into the shed, or if it's the summertime and the animals are out, they come onto the farm. Because for me, it's all about the farm. And we actually had, it was a prefab that was being used for packaging that wasn't, that was empty most of the time. I just cladded it with timber, did it simply up, and this now is where the visitor can come in, and we're part of this Economy Musée network that a number of members are up here in Northern Ireland. There are 7 of us all together in Northern Ireland, in North and Southern Ireland, including Brighter Gold, Rapeseed Oil. So we got these beautiful information panels. So if people come when the farm is open, if they haven't booked an actual tour, they can come and read about us. There is a video showing them. But then we have the planned tours. It's a tour that usually takes an hour and a half. So we have people, so we have tour operators who come and pre-book the tours for us. I'm amazed at the type of people that come. We have anything from a group of Dutch farmers, and all they want to know about is our breeding, our animals, our goats and our kids. We have wine and tour operators where they just want to know about the cheese making. We very much fit our tours to the needs of the particular tourists. What people enjoy the most, and what we should never forget, it's not about the product, it's about the people. And it's about the experience. So what we give is a very personal experience where they remember where they have been. It's not just about the cheese or the goat, it's the overall experience as part of their overall visit to West Clare, to the Brine Food Trail. And that's what I keep on reminding those, everybody who works with me, the 5 or 6 staff, that anybody who comes through the gate or through that door, they are as important, or as you are important. You must put a big smile on your face and welcome them. And even though you could be exhausted after goat pitting all through the night, or some cheese has gone off in the vat, but a friendly welcome. And if you explain, if you're honest and say, I've had a bad day, something's gone wrong, they come because they want to hear the story. It's about the story and the experience. It's not about the product. Thank you.